You love the Pac-12 race. I love the Pac-12 race, and you touched upon it. Washington State's only got 2 losses. Oregon State's only got 2 losses. This is going to be fascinating to see it play out. I just the thought of your average college football fan thinking that a Washington State or Oregon State could be playing in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Well, even this week, Mark, Washington started the year losing to Montana. If they beat the Ducks, they're in a tie for the North.
True.
I mean, this is a wild situation. Here the Ducks are at number 4 in the country, looking to go to the college football playoff. And Washington's licking their chops thinking, we got these guys. We wanted them last year. We didn't get to play because of COVID. There's all sorts of stuff built into this drama. And then this week, the Jimmy Lake press conference, which was hilarious, went with the idea that Washington and Oregon aren't rivals because they have more, they deal with teams with more academic prowess. That was awesome. And I told my mom that, said, that's what Cal used to say. That's what Stanford used to say. You know, it's the same thing. When they can't compete on the field, they try to compete in the classroom. Like recruits are going to get toured. Oh, here's the weight facility. Oh, here's the math department. I mean, come on. I mean, it's a crazy situation. That just threw gas on the fire. And, you know, it's just a wild year. This is one of these years where anything can happen. I mean, look at Alabama. Alabama loses to Texas A&M. They didn't see that one coming. And what happens to them? They're in the number 2 spot. They're fine. They're fine. Yeah. I think that the committee's learning a little bit. Every year they're doing it. They're learning a little bit. Early on in the committee's history, I guarantee it, the undefeated teams will be up there. Michigan State will be at number 2. Cincinnati would be at number 3 just because they're undefeated. Oklahoma would be in this thing. Guarantee it, just because. And Oklahoma has consistently moved back throughout the year, and they're still winning games. They're winning games and losing spots at the same time. That never used to happen. So I think the committee's learning. I think the committee's trying, like you said, trying to get the best 4 teams and not really listening to the noise.
I am still just fascinated with this Pac-12 race. You know, it was just a couple weekends ago. We were checking out Washington barely struggling by, like, needing a fourth quarter comeback to beat Arizona, who's one of the worst teams in the country. He's lost 20 consecutive games, and here they are. With a win, they get themselves into a 4-way tie potentially for the Pac12 North Division lead.
And they need it. I mean, this is a team that is a quality football program. This is a team that thinks of themselves as being national championship contenders, and it's got all the booster money. Everybody talks about how, Uncle Phil, you know, does all this stuff. There's tons of money out here, and there's huge money in Seattle. They've got great facilities. They call it the greatest setting in college football. It's the best setting I've seen a football game in, other than, you know, a New Year's Day in the Rose Bowl. I think is pretty special. But on the lake in a major metropolitan city, I mean, you don't have real estate like that for the average college. Oregon is in Eugene. Oregon's football stadium was built in the city dump. I mean, it was the land that was available. I mean, we're talking Oregon State's in Corvallis. Oregon State's going to compete with Seattle? No way. Seattle's twice the size of Portland. So, again, I just think that there's advantages built in here. I think Washington State has a chance to beat Washington in the Apple Cup this year, and I think Washington State has an opportunity to really do some things. They've got a really exciting offense. I think Utah has surprised people in the South by picking things up, going to the backup quarterback. Cam Rising's just done crazy things for Utah. I think that team's a team on the rise. And the Bebos, you got to love Jonathan Smith and the Beavs, you know, a guy who's an alum there, who won there, who saw greatness, had Dennis Erickson as a coach, legendary sort of stuff. And he's won everywhere he's went. And you look at Washington just a couple of years ago, they did not retain Jonathan Smith. They went with Jimmy Lake. And they're in a situation where I know a lot of alums up there and a lot of fans up there that are furious at this Jimmy Lake situation up there. And they think that that's completely off the rails and not getting better. And stuff like that press conference doesn't help when they're talking about not in the same boat as recruiting. They're completely in the same boat as recruiting. Oregon is the number 1 rival of their recruits. Washington doesn't even send offers to that many guys. Of the people who have taken the recruits from Washington, Oregon's the number 1 team. Of course, Oregon's the rival. Why would you try to not say that? It's crazy to me. So I do think that Oregon State's on the rise. I think that Washington State's on the rise post Leach. They've kind of found their footing. I think Cal's kind of started to figure it out. They had a really tough run of it early on in the year, but they're starting to get their offense put together, and that's the team that we thought was going to get a little bit better. I think David Shaw's solid at Stanford. I think they have a kind of an ebb and flow of athletes that come in there, and there's sometimes where they get a really good group coming in. Those are all solid teams in the North. Then in the South, USC just didn't hold up their end of the bargain. USC had a really rough time of it this year, firing their coach halfway through the year. I mean, Arizona State's had some up and downs, not expecting their loss last week. So, again, I think Utah is in a really unique spot. I think they have a clear path to the South. And I think if Oregon wins out and Utah wins out, you're going to have to beat Utah twice to get into that national college playoff. That's going to be very difficult for Oregon. I think going up to Salt Lake and beating them there and then turning around and going to Vegas and beating them there again, tough task, man.
It's funny that Jimmy Lake also says that just a few months following a summer in which he was in direct competition with Oregon for the #1 player in high school football, JT Tuimoloau, who eventually went to Ohio State, but they were the final 3. So they were competing directly in recruiting. And then he makes this statement. Was there anything asked of him that led him to take off on that?
Yeah. So what happened was he's in a normal press conference. And again, I think it came off totally wrong. I think he was actually trying to be, a little bit soft-spoken on her, trying to be humble about the situation. Just came off so bizarre. But yeah, a guy named Dave Softy Mahler, who's kind of a radio legend up here. He's a Husky nut. He asked him, "Hey, what would be one word you would give to talk about the rivalry?" And he kind of shook it off. And then the next question says, "Well, speaking of the rivalry, is the rivalry at a kind of a different level now that it's not just the teams, it's not just the schools, but it's almost kind of personal between the coaches because of recruiting, because of what's happened? In this last year, like you talked about the JTT recruitment, but there's also been a lot of other players that are very close to both those programs or have decommitted from Washington and had committed to Oregon." And he went on a thing and said, "No, I think that's overblown." And then he went into the thing of saying, we don't really recruit. We don't really compete with them. Our rivals are more Notre Dame and Stanford and USC and schools with more academic prowess. And he just went that route, like right off the gate. And people were so bewildered by it because that's not what their alumni want to hear. Their alumni want to hear, no, we're competing with these guys. Because he also then right afterward talked about how the Oregon and Washington rivalry is more of a rivalry about championships. They're both trying to get to championships. So it was this weird kind of a thing where he was saying he wasn't recruiting those same players, but they were both trying to fight for championships. So again, I just think that the media jumped on it, and the media is absolutely hyper-focused on this guy. Every single week, this guy's favorite answer in the post-game press conference is, "I don't know. I'll have to check the tape." I mean, they ask him, "What happened on that 4th down play?" "I don't know. I got to check the tape." I mean, what? He's like, and he said it after the Montana game, "I don't have that great of a perspective there." I'm like, well, you need front row seat? You're on the field. You just can't say those things in a press conference. They're going to be used against you for years. And they're already building the case against him. They think the recruiting's flatlined. And a lot of those Husky friends of mine, have said that it reminds them of the Helfrich years when Helfrich kind of lost control of the program, didn't have the recruiting, didn't have the good kind of vibe with everybody on the team. And it kind of lost its focus a little bit. And it went from National College Football Playoff to not making a bowl game. And if Washington loses to Oregon this week and loses to Washington State, they're going to have to win the rest of those games to get to the bowl game. And that's going to be tough for them.
And I'm pretty sure, Ryan, that the games are played on Saturday afternoon and these news conferences are on Monday.
Oh, no. What he does is
this is after the game.
This is the one right after the game. And he says, "I'll get to you Monday with that answer." What college football coach takes 3 days to answer a question?
Oh my goodness.
It's crazy.
Yeah.